Hey everyone, I've never filmed a video like this before and I'm really nervous because it's kind of like a review video, but then linking in my own experiences with the show Heartstopper. I'd like to point out straight away, I didn't experience a lot of the things in the show, but I still wanted to link in my own experiences as a member of the LGBT community, just to link it in basically as well. Because if you've come across this video, I would like to think you've already seen the show. So for a bit of background info, the show is called Heartstopper. It debuted almost 2 weeks ago now on Netflix and is based on the graphic novels by Alice Oseman. There is currently 4 volumes out, and I believe there's a 5th and final one to come. She also wrote the show, and from what I've read on Twitter and things, she has made some slight changes and tweaks from the books to the show, which many people have said have translated pretty well. I personally loved the show. It was absolutely the most adorable, heartwarming thing I've ever seen in my life. And the way that I'm going to structure the video is I'm going to do a character run through. I'm going to run through, to me, the biggest sort of I've called them plot points of each episode. I think I've got 2 for each episode. There's 8 episodes in total. And then do a chat at the end about my own experiences when I started the big school, which was 21 years ago, because I was 11 when I went to big school, or high school, or the academy, or secondary school, or however you want to call it. So that is how I'm going to run through this video. So let's get to it. First up, let's talk the characters. Now, first of all, I'm of course going to talk about the main 2 characters, Charlie Spring and Nick Nelson. Now, Charlie Spring is a sort of, he gets called it, he's a little nerdy type, but he is just so cute, he's so pure, and I think he really just wants the love and affection from a boy. That's all he really wants. And from the way that his friend group talk to him, he's always had crushes on the wrong guys. And unfortunately, the year before we see Heartstopper, he got bullied quite a lot. This is all the information from the show, by the way. I'm not including anything from the novels because I haven't read them. And he just wants to find someone. Enter Nick Nelson, who they end up sitting next to each other in form class, I think it's called, at the very start of the day. So they sit next to each other at the start of every day, and the iconic hi, and Charlie instantly falls for Nick, and he keeps getting told that, in fact, no, we'll talk about little bits like that afterwards. So with Nick's character, he is very much the most popular kid in school, plays rugby, all the girls like him, he has a massive group of friends, and as I say, just very popular in general. And this is a hopefully quick run through of them. Next up, we have Charlie's friendship group. So we have Tao, who comes across quite fiery, most definitely. And at the start of the show, I wasn't overly keen on him. I did come around slightly towards the end because everything sort of comes into focus the more that the show goes on. He loves movies as well. Isaac, we don't really know much about Isaac. He's a bookworm. That's kind of it. He's there kicking around in the background sometimes. I don't have much to say on him. With Elle, I found her character quite fascinating because Elle is a trans character, and what I really liked was, it was, to me, and I never noticed, I did binge the show in like 24 hours, it's never mentioned that she's trans. Basically, the school that they go to, there's a boys' school and a girls' school, and all they say is that Elle used to go to the boys' school and she now goes to the girls' school. The words Elle is trans never actually are said, I don't think. Not that I'm aware of. And I really, really like that. I love that it doesn't have to be said. Nobody cares. She is who she is, and I really, really like that. I love how it's not a big deal because it's not. Next up, we have Tara and Darcy. Speaking of Elle, Elle doesn't have friends when she goes to the girls' school to begin with, and she ends up becoming friends with Tara and Darcy. And as they say themselves, you've made friends with the school lesbians. And Tara and Darcy, they're actually a really great couple. They're also a mixed race couple. I think that's the correct term. I'm not sure, as well. And they're just really great characters as well. I really did like them. Harry, he is one of Nick's friends, or was, you'll see as the show progresses, and he's honestly a bit of a dick. And we'll speak about more about him when we get to the plot point section. Ben, so we meet Ben at the very start of the season, when he first meets up with Charlie, or Charlie meets up with him, should I say. Basically, Ben calls the shots, and we'll get to that with plot points for the first episode. Then we have Nick's mum, played by Olivia Colman. Mind blown at that. I was like, what? This is Olivia Colman? I didn't know that she was in the show for a start, and she was just amazing, and we'll speak about her in the last episode. Then we have Imogen. Imogen comes across very grating, I think, to begin with, and then there is a moment where Nick does a monologue speech at which episode? Episode 5. And things just kind of, happen, and things are said, and she understands more, but she can't help the way that she's acting, if you know what I mean. Like, she really likes Nick, but we'll speak about that, as I say, later on. And then finally we have Charlie's sister. I can't remember her name, I'm so sorry. I'll pop it on the screen. I really like her. We only really see her when she's basically sitting on the bus with Charlie or at home, and she's always just kind of creeping around, holding and sipping a drink through a straw. And I really like her character, and they have a really sweet moment towards the end of the series together as well, when he cries on her shoulder. And that, I think, is the main characters that I've spoken about. And now that we've done that, I'm going to jump to the plot points and sort of run through the series as a whole, and then at the end we'll talk, as I've said before, about my own experiences as a child growing up. The way that I'm going to do the plot points section is to talk about what I think are important things that happen within the show, which obviously are for just the things that happen, okay? Whether it be something that is sad or happy or negative or anything like that, I'm just going to talk about them and give my thoughts. First up, I've got a couple of things for episode 1. Of course, we have the first meeting between Charlie and Nick, which is honestly just so pure and so adorable. And Charlie goes to sit next to Nick, and they just have this high moment, the way they say it. I'm not going to attempt to do it, but it's just so adorable. And obviously from then on, Nick sees Charlie in the field doing his sporting event. Not sporting event. He must do cross country or running, I think, Charlie. And Nick is obviously the rugby dude, and he invites him to the rugby team. Something that happens in the episode as well is the fact that Charlie actually hears the rugby guys bad-mouthing him before he's even entered the locker area. And one thing that I hated when I was younger was the fact that you had to get changed in front of everyone. I hated that. That was awful. The worst thing ever. And he hears that, and of course that plays on Charlie's mind because he was bullied the previous year, and he's gone into this new year hoping for, or the new school year, should I say, with a different mindset and just trying to get through the year and just have some fun with his friends, basically. Then, of course, we have the Ben situation. So we meet Ben at the very start of the episode, and Ben is very much a click your fingers kind of guy, and Charlie will go running, and you see them making out at the start of the episode. But the thing that we then discovered about Ben is he has a girlfriend, and Charlie sees that. Charlie thinks they're boyfriends, but if you're watching the show and think that what they have is boyfriends, you are sadly mistaken. That is not. Ben doesn't want to entertain Charlie or even acknowledge his existence unless it's just the two of them, and that is not right at all. And then at the end of the episode, or towards the end of the episode, we see that Ben messages Charlie again. Charlie goes to meet him, and this is after rugby practice, and Nick sees Charlie go off back into the school, and what we don't realise is that Nick actually follows him. And what happens is something quite serious that I don't think people are actually talking about, is the fact that Ben forces himself onto Charlie and pushes Charlie against the wall and kisses him. And Charlie is saying no and trying to push him away, and then Nick grabs Ben, tells him to piss off, and from then on, that is how Charlie and Nick start talking, and it's all via Instagram, which I find so cute that it's all via Instagram, because I don't really chat on Instagram, but maybe I'm too old now for that. Who knows? And that is my little episode 1 run through. With episode 2, this is the first time that they hang out together, so via sort of the Instagram thing, and Nick just feels very much like he can be himself when he's around Charlie, rather than sort of the front that he puts on when he's with his rugby friends and at school. But sometimes when you have to act a certain way all the time, you think that that's the way you're supposed to be, not the way that you secretly maybe want to be, because the way you want to be, you sometimes just push down and forget about it until someone like Charlie comes along and is like, do you know what, it's okay to like other stuff and to do other things. And the other main important thing is, so they have this really fun day where they're playing in the snow and they're hanging out together with Nick's dog Nellie, and they obviously watch a movie on the couch and Charlie falls asleep. And Nick goes to hold Charlie's hand, and it was just the purest thing ever. And I was literally like on the couch going, just do it, just touch his finger. But he didn't, and it was so sad. I really wish that he just grabbed it, or just, but yeah, he didn't. So those were my couple of things from episode 2. Also, I do have notes, which is why I'm sometimes looking down. Episode 3, this was Harry's 16th. So Harry, we spoke about at the start of the video, is one of Nick's friends, should we say, and hires this humongous mansion, and Nick invites Charlie, obviously. So everyone's expecting Nick to invite a girl, and he invites Charlie, and of course Harry and the friends obviously question why he's brought him, and they actually criticize and slag Charlie off, and Nick stands up for him, and then they end up running away or something, and Nick and Charlie end up in the same room at the very top of the mansion, shall we say, and they're sat on the floor against the wall, and their sort of pinky fingers like graze off each other. And what I love about the show is sort of you would get like little fireworks or little like swirls and stuff on the screen, and it's kind of like the look on their face of like, oh my god, is this really happening? And then this is where they kiss for the first time. Oh, it was just, yeah. The fact that this show even exists now, like it wouldn't have existed like when I was growing up, I don't think, to like this extent, especially for like school kids. There's always been shows that were obviously overly sexualized, Queer as Folk to name as one. Obviously we've had It's a Sin, which was, was that last year or the year before? That was very adult, do not watch that. I think that was rated 15 or 18, but it was very good, and it was based on the HIV epidemic in the 80s, and it was discussed in the way that people were treated, but that is a whole other topic. But something like this I don't think would have existed even 20 years ago. I just don't think it would have happened to the extent that it is now. They could have maybe attempted it, but it wouldn't be like it is now. And that is that. Episode 4, we have the peer-pressured date, where Nick is peer-pressured into dating Imogen, because Imogen really, really, really likes Nick, and Nick basically is asked in front of loads of people by Imogen, and he feels like he cannot say no because he's so conflicted about his sexuality at the time, because he also goes on Google and is like, is he gay, and does a gay quiz, and he's very, very confused, which is obviously it's a very confusing time for him. He's very conflicted. He has no idea what's going on. He's like, I like Charlie as a friend, but we also kissed, and it's been there, got the t-shirt. It's not nice. So he agrees to the date in episode 4. Episode 5 is when the date is supposed to happen, and he chooses not to go, which in the long term was the right thing to do. He ends up going out for Charlie's birthday instead, where they of course share another kiss. And in this episode, we then have the monologue that I spoke about at the start. I don't obviously know the monologue. I will link it down below. There's tons of little clips kicking around on YouTube, so if I can find it, I'll link it down below. And that is where Nick agrees, or he asks Imogen to meet him, and they sit on a park bench, and he basically just explains how he's been feeling, about how he's very conflicted, and whether he, as I said just briefly before, if he's just been acting a certain way because that's the way that the world expects him to be, and the way his friends expect him to be, like he can't be him true self. And Imogen understands, and from that point on they do become friends. And I did a really bad job of explaining that, but if you've watched it, you'll know that he definitely did it a lot better than I just did. So episode 6, we have a sort of school concert where the girls' school and the boys' school come together for a sort of orchestra thing. I don't really know. And Tara and Darcy and Nick are all part of it. Nick does the drum, not Nick, Charlie does the drums. And Tara and Darcy have officially announced to Instagram that they are lesbians. And there is many comments kicking around, and Tara hears the negative comments during just before the show's about to start, and runs off and can't handle it. And to hear those kind of comments is not nice, because you feel like you're trying to be your true authentic self, and then to have people sort of then come and sort of kick you back down again is really not a nice feeling. And there'll always be people that will disagree with the way that you live your life, but you have to rise above it and go, do you know what, F you, I am who I am, and that is basically it. And I know that it's a lot easier said than done, but believe me, as you get older, like me, you'll realise that that is completely and utterly the case. We then have the triple date. The triple date happens before the concert fiasco. So Nick has told Tara and Darcy about him and Charlie, so it becomes a double date. And Elle and Tao seem to like each other, but it's kind of like they need a nudge in the right direction, and it's kind of set up as a triple date, and Elle figures it all out and sort of questions why they've done that. She doesn't want to ruin the friendship that she already has. I just thought that I would mention that just as a little side thing. So episode 7, we have the cinema where, so it's Nick, Harry and friends go to the cinema, and of course Charlie's invited as well by Nick, and a fight breaks out. There is a slur used against Charlie that I will not say in this video, but there's a slur used, and Nick jumps to Charlie's defense and ends up in a fight and ends up with a black eye. And then Charlie runs off and gets picked up by his dad, and he goes away. And then, what else have I got here? Tao confronts Charlie because he finds out about the relationship with Nick, and he's last to find out and feels like he's been left to the side as a friend. The reason I think that Charlie didn't tell him is just mainly because he was scared, not maybe of the reaction as such, but more, I'm not sure actually why. I don't really know. And then we move on to the final episode where Charlie is ignoring Nick because he feels like the fight at the cinema was his fault. Charlie very much blames himself for a lot of things that happened, and he is very much blaming himself for all of these things that have happened. So he chooses to ignore Nick because that way nothing bad can happen to Nick, because he's trying to protect him, which is of course incredibly sweet. We then have sports day itself. So Charlie has ditched the rugby team. So Nick is playing in the rugby team and Charlie does the running. Him and Tao make up, by the way, after we have an episode of Tao ignoring Charlie, basically. So I've given him the silent treatment. And they swap jerseys and end up doing different events. And we see that Charlie is standing on this back thing so that he can see one of the events happening. And Nick stops playing rugby, walks over to Charlie, takes his hands, and they go and they have a really sweet conversation in the hallway. And from that point on, they then become boyfriends, and that's where we see them go off to the beach for the day, and intercut with that is scenes of Nick coming out as bisexual to his mother, and it's just a really sweet moment. And again, I'll link a video down below if you want to rewatch that scene, or if you've not seen the show before, so that you can watch a couple of the scenes down below. And that's sort of my run through of the sort of major plot points from the show, and how, to me, they felt like the most important ones. I definitely feel like the one of Ben forcing himself on Charlie is a really important one. That is a complete no. We've got the fact that Nick stands up for Charlie multiple times against sort of who his friends were for years and years, but he's now standing up for Charlie, and that's amazing as well. And the fact that, obviously, before Nick decided to before Nick then was sort of deliberating on his own sexuality, he didn't give a shit that Charlie was gay anyways. So I love that that's not a big deal either. So So yeah, that's all about the plot points, and I hope that this video is making some sense and has some form of rhythm to it. But the final part of the video is going to be me talking about my own experiences when I was younger, which was a very long time ago now. So now that I've spoken about the show, I'm going to talk about my own experiences growing up. And I will say that I will have put on the screen like trigger warning, because obviously I understand that for some people to hear stuff like this, it does trigger people. I'm doing a very bad job of explaining this, but and I'll also put a trigger warning in the description down below as well, just because I know that some people might not be able to listen to things that I'm saying, especially when it comes to bullying and things like that. So from my own experiences growing up, I went to big school in 2011, and so in Scotland you have primary school, and then you have what we call the academy. So you are in primary school from primaries 1 to 7, and I had the same friends growing up who were the same age as me. And then obviously when I went to the big school, I just took the same friends over, and everything was absolutely fine. And then as you start to get older and then you hit the teenage years, obviously things start happening and you change and you start to like different things. And I wouldn't exactly say that I started to like boys straight away, but my friends liked football and girls, and I did not like football and girls. And then from there, things just kind of started to like really like dive, like completely and utterly nosedive. So my friends were fine, to be honest, but then they decided, like kids do, to start picking off a member of the friendship group, which, not fantastic. Knew my time would come, and of course it did, and essentially it left me with nobody. And it wasn't a fun experience to go through, because believe me, it wasn't, because I'd never made other friends at school. I'd maybe made the odd person that I would say hi to, but I was incredibly shy at school, didn't speak to anyone, got on with my work, and went home, and basically didn't really do anything. That was me. Kind of a loner, kind of sad really, when you look back at it. So when I eventually was picked off and had nobody, I pretended to be sick for a week, which I don't really know what it was going to accomplish, because at the end of the day I still had to then go back to school after a week. I couldn't be sick forever. So I then had to then go back and still have no friends when I went back to school. So my first thought was, when I ended up going back, that I would just act like nothing had happened and see. Well, that didn't work, because they still didn't speak to me. And I still don't understand why, to be honest. I still don't actually understand why they did it, because they did it to a couple of other people as well. I wasn't the first one, which I guess made me feel slightly better. But still dickish move, to be honest, on their part, obviously. And at that point, I ended up sort of, so on my first break, which was I think 15-20 minutes, I would spend it in the library by myself, wandering around in circles and not really doing very much. And I just want to point out that this doesn't upset me to talk about. It really, really doesn't. It's just my experience of growing up at school. This isn't linked to being gay or anything like that. It's just my own experiences. And obviously Charlie spent his previous year before the show alienated because he was bullied. I'm guessing he was bullied for being gay is what I am imagining what it was. But this is still linked with sort of bullying and being picked off. So that wasn't nice. And then I would kind of have lunch and then continue to do the same thing again. I didn't have anyone at all. Until I somehow managed to find people to go to lunch with, and it was awkward, but one of them was super nice to me, and all these people will remain nameless, but he was really nice to me. And then I ended up finding friends who I'm still friends with now. I'll name them. They're Emma and Katie, and I'm still friends with them now, and they're amazing, and very grateful, because before that, this was kind of what I ended up doing, which wasn't an awful lot. another thing that I obviously had, this links into being gay at school, and obviously not really realising that I was I would obviously get name called. I would get name called in class. I remember the boy who it was at school, and he apologised years later for it. And honestly, I think I'd have rather had the apology at school than the apology later, because I'd grown up enough to realise that I honestly didn't care, because so many years had passed. I'm like, I'm not bothered. I think I would have probably held it and been bitter while I was at school, but after I left school and obviously had great new friends, and, you know, I've matured quite a lot in that time frame, and even more so since then as well, I just didn't care. I would have rather had the apology at school to make me feel less crap about myself, because to hear the gay boy things and all the other horrible things that they would say, because I say this quite a lot. I feel like the people that call you the names seem to know that you're gay before you do. I don't know whether I don't understand how they figured it out, but I had no idea that I was gay. I didn't. I really, really didn't. And it's when they start to say it, you kind of doubt yourself and go, wait a minute, am I? Or am I just gay because they've told me I am? And then your head gets mashed, and then you cannot think properly. And then I had to act like I liked somebody who I really liked as a friend because she was really cool, but in absolutely no way romantically. There was a couple of boys at school I of course liked, but obviously they were crushes and nothing was ever going to happen from that. But yeah, people not nice. Really, really, really not nice at all. And that was kind of my experiences at school, which honestly were probably super duper mild, because I never had any physical violence against me. It was always just words, which, believe me, they hurt. Being alienated as well, so being forced out, that's horrible as well. To basically feel like you have nobody, that is really, really not nice. And the guy that invited me for lunch with the big friendship group, he doesn't know who he is probably, but he's great, and he did a really good thing, and it really meant a lot, because it meant I wasn't alone. So thank you, but you won't know, you won't ever watch this video. And that is that. To round out the video, I'm going to just briefly talk, hopefully briefly, talk about how things have changed so much, and the fact that I've seen so many people on Twitter who are my age or a bit younger and say that they kind of really appreciate a show like this and wish that they had a show like Heartstopper when they were grown up, but it also makes them feel bitter and resentful that they didn't have that experience. I don't feel bitter or resentful at all. I would rather that I went through the crap that I went through so that somebody else could have an amazing experience, because my experience might sound kind of crappy, and to live through it was not great. Believe me, it wasn't. But I would rather that I would go through that than someone go through something worse. And that at least now there are shows like this, and there are other shows out there as well that obviously are more adult, but this is a show that will really help people who are the age of the kids in the show that they're playing. So they're 15, 16, and kids that are younger as well, even figuring out who they are. This show might really help someone. And I'm sure it's going to help dozens, maybe even hundreds of people sort of realize who they are, because the show touches on so many topics. It touches on all the different sexualities. So gay, bi, lesbian, trans is in there. Trans isn't a sexuality, but obviously trans people as well. It has the coming out story. It has the homophobia. It has possibly transphobia that I missed. It also has the bullying as well. It also has the horrible Ben forcing himself on Charlie. So much is addressed in the show as well. And it's done in a way that it's completely accessible for teenagers, basically, because the novels were written for teenagers, because I believe it's a young adult's book. But I am very tempted to get them all, because I would really like to know how it sort of finishes and how it continues on. I've heard it gets a little heavy, but I still would like to know. And that's what I have to say about everything. And I hope that it's made sense. And if when I watch the footage back and listen to my ramblings that it sounds alright, I'll publish it. And if not, you'll never see this video. I don't know. But that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do give it a thumbs up for me. Comment down below. I don't know what you're going to comment down below. Comment if you really liked the show, because I absolutely loved and adored the show. If you haven't seen the show, please watch it. As I say, I will leave a couple of clips linked down below so you can check them out. They are on YouTube and they've not been taken down, so I'll leave them linked. But I would always say, please go and watch the show. It's on Netflix. It's called Heartstopper. It's amazing. I literally binge watched it in the space of 24 hours. It was fab. It's 8 half-hour episodes. It's completely doable. And leave your own experiences, you name it. You know, we can get conversation going down below. And if you want to reach out to me, I also always have my Instagram and Twitter linked down below as well. So if you want to chat, reach out. I'm here. And that's it. Thank you for watching. I've been Disney Matt, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.